Okay, so once you finish your air brakes and in-cab inspection, you're going to go with your checklist and it says all external lights. So you want to ask the examiner to please help you check all the external lights, and some of them will direct you, some of them will wait for you to direct them. So make sure you ask them to go to the front, check all the clearance lights, high and low beams, right and left turn signals for the front and back, hazards for the front and back, and your braking on the back. Then once you finish that, you'll get out with 3 points of contact. Make sure you get out the way you got in, backwards. If you go forward, some of them will pretty much fail you on the spot. So make sure you're always being safe. Okay, once you do that, you get out safely. You're going to start the outside inspection, and this inspection is the new way that they've changed it. So it's a new handbook since July 10th of this year. Okay, so we're going to start with the top of the vehicle. On the top of the vehicle, we have our 5 amber clearance lights. Lenses are clean, not broken, not missing. We'll go down to our headlights. Headlights are white in color, 2 functions, high and low beams. We'll go to our side lights. Side lights are amber in color, 3 functions, turning signals, hazards, and running. And then you can't see it here, but you have amber reflector on each side. So all lenses and amber reflectors are clean, not broken, not missing. Then we'll go to our fog lights. Fog lights white in color. Their lenses are clean, not broken, not missing. Then we'll go down underneath the vehicle. So you want to physically look under the vehicle. There's no leaks, no puddles, nothing hanging. And the vehicle is level from front to back. And it's not leaning from side to side. If it were, it would indicate a suspension problem. And that's pretty much it for the front. You go inside and then open the hood. So the latch is underneath the steering column. You open the hood and you'll come back and open the hood from the front. Just make sure you use both hands. Be safe. And when you open it, you'll have them. Another thing also, you want to make sure you talk directly to them. Make sure they're looking at you and paying attention to you loud enough so that they hear you, because there's a lot of things going on at once. And just ask them, please, examiner, follow me to the passenger side. So we'll start with the passenger side. And the passenger side, we're pretty much just doing the coolant reservoir. So right now we're going off our checklist. It's a critical fluid levels, which is our coolant, power steering, and engine oil. So our coolant reservoir is not cracked, broken, or leaking. It's properly mounted secured to our radiator. Cap is hand tight with a good rubber seal, no leaks. And then you want to point in this direction. And right here, check here to make sure it's filled to the proper level. And then all hoses from the coolant reservoir have no abrasions, bubbles, or cuts, not cracked, worn, or leaking. They're properly mounted secured on both ends. And then you just want to visually point. You're visually looking and pointing at all other visible hoses. So you have your brake chamber hose, some other hoses here that connect to the engine and transmission, and down here you can't really see it, but it's a radiator hose. So just kind of point in those directions and let them know all of the visible hoses have no abrasions, bubbles, or cuts. They're not cracked, worn, or leaking, and properly mounted secured on all ends. That's all you have to do from this side. Then you'll go around. Examiner, please follow me to the driver's side. On the driver's side, we're going to continue with our critical fluid levels, which I mentioned. So we're going to go with the power steering fluid reservoir. And you have a check, which is a dipstick, and the fill, which is the cap. They're not broken or leaking. Properly mounted secured to the frame. Cap is hand tight with a good rubber seal. No leaks. To check, you need to pull the dipstick out, clean it, reinsert it, pull it back out, and check to make sure it's filled to the proper level. And for your power steering fluid reservoir, you need to check all hoses, have no abrasions, bubbles, or cuts, not cracked, worn, or leaking, properly mounted secured on both ends. Then you pretty much say the same thing for your engine oil. Engine oil, check is your dipstick, fill is your cap, not broken or leaking, properly mounted secured to the frame. Cap is hand tight with a good rubber seal, no leaks. To check, pull the dipstick out, clean it, reinsert it, pull it back out, and check to make sure it's filled to the proper level. Okay, from there, we're going to do an overview of our engine and our transmission. There are no dripping fluids around or under the engine and transmission. Then we'll go to our air compressor. You just point in this general area. Air compressor is gear driven, not broken, no air leaks, probably not secured to the engine. All hoses have no abrasions, bubbles, or cuts, not cracked, worn, or leaking air. Okay, then we'll go to our air supply harness and air governor. Both of them are not broken, not leaking air. They're probably mounted secure to the firewall. And then you want to talk about all the airlines. All the airlines have no abrasions, bubbles, or cuts, not cracked, worn, or leaking any air, probably mounted secured on all ends. Then from there, we're going to go to our steering system. So we were doing the boot and the shaft and the U-joints, but on the new paperwork, it's not on there. So we're not going to mention it anymore. We're going to start with the power steering box. So power steering box, it's gear driven. It's not cracked or broken, not leaking, no missing hardware. It's properly mounted secured to the frame. All steering hoses and connections have no abrasions, bubbles, or cuts. They're not cracked, worn, or leaking. Properly mounted secured on all ends. Then we're going to go to our pitman arm. Our pitman arm, our drag link. You can't see it over here, but back here from the drag link, you have an upper control arm that's connected to the drag link. You have a lower control arm, one on each side, one on each wheel. So 2 lower control arms, one on each wheel. And then you have your tie rod. You can't really see a tie rod from wheel to wheel. So you're going to mention all those parts for your steering system. And you will say they're not bent, cracked, or broken or worn. All properly mounted secured with castle nuts and cotter pins. And none of the nuts, bolts, or pins are missing. And all joints and sockets are not worn or loose. And it just depends on the examiner you get. Some examiners are okay with you saying them all together as long as you're clear and you're naming each part, taking your time, saying what each part is. Some examiners want you to do it separately. So just get a feel for your examiner, ask them questions before you start. If you're in the middle of this and they're saying, some of them will tell you, no, I don't want to hear it together, give it to me separate. So then you would just do each part separate. Pitman arm, and then say what about it. Drag link, say what about it. Like it's not cracked, bent, or broken. Power mount secured with castle nuts and cotter pins. And then go to the next one. You're just repeating the same thing over and over for each part. But from what I know, most examiners will let you say them all together. Just take your time, be nice and loud and clear. And if not, just do them separately. Okay, then from there, that's pretty much the whole steering system. Then from there, we're going to go to tires, rims, and lug nuts. So your tire. For your tires, you want to remember ICD, inflation, condition, depth. Okay, so for inflation, inspect for proper inflation using a commercial tire air gauge. That's it for inflation. Condition. Inner, so you want to point to your inner and outer sidewalls of your tire, have no abrasions, bulges, bumps, or cuts. These steer tires cannot be recapped or retreaded, and they have a good seal around the rim. Then you're going to go to your tire tread depth. So tread should be evenly worn all the way around the tire, and should have no less than 4/32 of tread depth. And that should be checked with the tread depth gauge. And then your second and third axle will be no less than 2/32 of tread depth. Okay, then we'll talk about the valve stem. Valve stem should be accessible. It's not bent, cracked, or broken, not leaking any air, and caps should not be missing. Then we'll go to the rims. Rims are not bent, cracked, or broken, cannot have welding repairs or no illegal welds. Studs and bolt holes, which you can't really see, but you want to say it. The bolt holes, you can't see them. The studs, you can. So you want to say studs and bolt holes should not be elongated or out of round. Okay, then we'll move to our lug nuts. All lug nuts are present with no broken studs. No signs of rust trails or shiny threads that may show looseness on the lug nuts. Okay, so that's it for your tires, rims, and lug nuts. Then we'll go back. We're following pretty much the checklist that you will have with you. And we're going to go back to our leaf springs. Leaf springs, leaf spring mounts, and shocks. So your leaf springs are here. There's two of them here. So they go from here all the way back here. So what you say about your leaf springs, there are no missing, shifted, cracked, or broken leaf springs. They're probably mounted secured on both ends to the leaf spring mounts. So there's leaf spring mounts on both ends. Back here behind the pitman arm. Leaf spring mounts are not cracked, not broken, no, not missing any parts, and it's probably mounted secured to the frame. That's it. Leaf spring and mounts. We don't talk about U-bolts anymore, or anything else. Just leaf springs and leaf spring mounts. Then we'll go to our shock absorber. So shock absorber, not cracked or broken, not leaking, probably mounted secured to the frame and to the U-bolt. And that's it. And it does say on the paperwork, any visible suspension parts should be mentioned on each axle. Some examiners want to hear it, most of them don't. So I suggest anything that's visible, just mention it, especially the suspension parts. Okay. Then from there, we're gonna go to the brake line air hose. So brake line air hose right here. Brake line air hose and ABS electrical line. So these go to your brake chamber, which you can't see, but the brake chamber is over here. And we would talk about the brake chamber before, but it's not on the new paperwork. So all you need to mention is your airline for your brake chamber and your electrical line ABS for your brake chamber. So for your airline for your air hose, no abrasions, bubbles, or cuts, not cracked, worn, or leaking air, properly mounted secured on both ends. For your ABS electrical line, no exposed, frayed, or cut wires, and properly mounted secured on both ends. So the thinner one is a ABS and the thicker one is a airline. And that's all you would say for that. Then we'll go inside the inner part of the tire. We're going to talk about the next thing on the list is the brake contaminants. So for brake contaminants, you're going to talk about the brake drum and the brake shoe. So the brake drum, it's not broken, it's free of debris, free of contaminants such as grease and oil, no discoloration which would indicate overheating. Then brake shoes, not broken, free of debris, free of contaminants such as grease and oil, should have no less than a 1/4 inch of lining, material, or life. That's it. So we're pretty much done with lenses, critical fluids, fluids and air leaks, steering system, suspension, which is leaf springs, mounts, airbags, and shocks. Airbags are in the back of the truck, of the tractor. and some examiners don't want to hear it. I would just mention it, and they say I don't want to hear it or move on, then just stop talking about it and move on. Just, do what your examiner is asking you to do. Okay, then from there, we're going to go to the side of the vehicle. So, the side of the vehicle, you're going to mention your lenses, your light right here. It's a 2-function light, turning and hazards. It's amber in color, and the lenses are clean, not broken, not missing. Then you will talk about your mirror and mirror bracket. So mirror is clean, not cracked or broken. Brackets are not bent, cracked, or broken. Properly mounted, secured to the door and the cab with no missing parts. So that's all you'll say for the mirrors and the mirror brackets and for your side lights. Then we'll go to the battery. For the manual truck, the battery will be here. And for this is an automatic, batteries are over here. So if we go with the batteries, just like the list, batteries, the manual is over here on the manual truck, and the battery is here. So we'll go with the batteries. Batteries are power mount secured to the battery box. The battery box power mount secured to the frame. All connections on the battery should be tight and should not show excessive signs of corrosion. All electrical cables and lines are not cracked or worn and have no exposed, frayed, or cut wires. They're properly mounted secured on all ends. Battery box cover is properly mounted secured with good rubber straps. And that's it, you'll say for the batteries. Then we'll go to the fuel tanks. Okay, fuel tank. You talk about your fuel tank and your DEF tank. So your fuel tank is not been cracked or broken. There's no holes. And there's no leaks from your fuel tank or your lines. Okay, so fuel tank, power mount secured to your frame. It's not cracked or broken. Cap is hand tight with a good rubber seal, and there are no leaks from the tank or lines. You will say the same thing for your DEF tank. DEF tank's power mount secured to your frame. It's not cracked or broken. Cap is hand tight with a good rubber seal. There are no leaks on the tank or the lines. Okay. Then we'll go to the frame. Frame for the tractor, and also we're going to talk about the frame for the trailer. So the frame for the tractor is not bent, cracked, or broken. There's no holes, there's no broken welds, and frame is properly mounted secured from the front of the tractor all the way to the back of the tractor. And then we'll say the same for our trailer frame members or cross members. So trailer frame cross members, they're not bent, cracked, or broken. There's no holes, there's no broken welds. And the trailer cross members or frame members from the front of the trailer all the way to the back of the trailer, they're properly mounted secured on both sides of the trailer. And then you want to talk about your floorboard and floor area. There's no cracks, breaks, there's no holes in the cargo area, and the floorboard or area is properly mounted secured to your cross members or frame cross members. Okay. Then after that, we're gonna go to the back of the. We're gonna do the coupling, which is, so we did batteries, fuel tank, frame for tractor and trailer, air and electrical lines and connectors. So another thing I would suggest, you would do the lights, your utility light and your reflectors in the back. A lot of examiners don't want to hear it, but I would suggest you say them. Same thing for the lenses as you say in the front. And the reflectors, they're white in color. They're not cracked or broken, and they're present. Then we'll go with the coupling. So we'll start with the airline connectors. So on the automatic, you have airline connectors the mount and the connectors. So we're going to talk about the airline connectors, not cracked or broken, no air leaks, power mount secured, seated and sealed to the tractor, leading to the airlines. Blue is service and red is emergency. Both airlines have no abrasions, bubbles, or cuts. They're not cracked, worn, or leaking any air. They're power mount secured on both ends. So this goes here, and this will lead to the both ends. So once you talk about your airlines, you talk about your glad hands. So your glad hands are not cracked or broken with a good rubber seal. They're not leaking any air. Power mount secured on both ends, leading to the glad hand connectors. The glad hand connectors, not cracked or broken, has a good rubber seal, no air leaks, and is power mounted, secured, seated, and sealed to your trailer header board, the back of the trailer. Okay, so airline connectors, your airlines, blue is service, red is emergency. I would suggest start with doing all the airlines first, all the way to your trailer header board, glad hand connectors. Then we'll go back and we'll do the same thing for the electrical. So the electrical connectors, but for the electrical, they're pretty much the same thing. So we're going to point to both sides. So your electrical connector on your tractor and your electrical connector on your trailer header board are not cracked or broken, no exposed or frayed wires, properly mounted, secured, seated, and sealed on both ends. That way you don't have to say it double. And the plugs, point to both of them. Plugs on both ends are in good condition and properly locked into place with the safety latch. It should have a safety latch on both sides. The electrical line is green. It's not cracked or worn, and there's no exposed, frayed, or cut wires, and it's properly mounted secured on both ends. Okay, that's airlines and coupling. Then we'll just talk about the tension spring is in good condition, and it keeps all your lines from dragging on the vehicle and on the ground, and all your lines should not be tangled, crimped, or pinched. Okay, then we're going to move on to the trailer apron. So the trailer apron is pretty much this part, what's on top of the trailer. The trailer apron is not bent, cracked, or broken. It's properly mounted secured to the frame cross members on top of the frame. Here. Then we're going to go to the trailer kingpin. The trailer kingpin is pretty much the piece that connects and will be here. So it's a trailer apron is on top, which is this one. And then the kingpin is right here. And then that's what connects into here. So the trailer kingpin is not bent, cracked, or broken. It's power mount secured to the apron. So the kingpin is not bent, cracked, or broken. It's power mount secured to your apron. So it's power mount secured to the apron here. Okay, so you said your trailer apron, trailer kingpin. Then we'll go to the skid plate. So the top of this is the skid plate. Fifth wheel skid plate, not bent, cracked, or broken. It's properly greased and it's properly mounted secured to your fifth wheel platform. So the platform is what runs from frame to frame underneath the platform, which is here, frame to frame platform. Then we'll talk about, so the skid plate, we said not bent, cracked, or broken, properly greased, and it's properly mounted secured to the platform. Then you want to say between the skid plate and the apron, there's no gap or daylight. Okay, so it should be like that, where you cannot see daylight or a gap. So the apron and the fifth wheel skid plate should be no daylight or gap. Okay, then we're gonna go to the locking jaws. Locking jaws are what lock around the kingpin. So the locking jaws are in the lock position around the kingpin, and the locking jaws are not bent, cracked, or broken, properly greased, and properly mounted secured to your skid plate. Then we're going to go to the release arm. Release arm is over here. You can see it more right here. So your release arm and safety latch. Safety latch would just be underneath the release arm. So release arm and safety latch are in the engaged position, pulled out, would release or open the locking jaws from the kingpin, and it's not bent, cracked, or broken, and it's properly mounted secured to the skid plate. Okay, then we'll talk about the 3 pins. The most important one is a safety or locking pin, but we usually talk about the pivot, safety, and cotter pin. You just point in this general direction, so they'll be on the side here and here. So the side view here is right here, so you just point in the general direction and you let them know your pivot pin, safety pin, or locking pin and cotter pin pins are not bent, cracked, or broken. They're properly greased and properly mounted secured on both ends of the skid plate. Then we'll talk about the platform and the platform mount. So the platform is what the skid plate is sitting on. So the platform and then the platform mount, it goes from side to side, from frame to frame, and your platform goes this way. Platform is here, and then your platform mount is here, which platform mount goes on your frame. So for the platform and the platform mount, you're going to say pretty much the same thing. Your platform, just say it separately, but platform and platform mount, not damaged, no rust, no broken welds, no missing hardware, and properly mounted secured to the frame. So your platform is properly mounted secured to your platform mount. So your platform to your platform mount, and you say the same things from your platform mount. The only difference is properly mounted secured to the frame. Okay, and then that pretty much will finish up the fifth wheel part, and then we'll go to the landing gear and clearance. And then also, did I mention on the side of your vehicle, you want to mention your 50% reflective tape, red and white in color. It's present, visible, should not be damaged. And anywhere you see reflective tape on the side of your vehicle and the back of your vehicle, you're also going to talk about it. And then your landing gear, we're going to keep it very simple. Landing gear and clearance. Just so you guys know, this is your landing gear leg, your landing gear shoe or landing pads, your support bar and frame, your crank handle, your landing gear 2-speed box. From your handle is your crossbar or shank, and then the frame. So landing gear should be fully raised, has no missing parts. Crank handle is secure, so it's not hanging or loose. And support frame and landing pads should not be damaged. And then you want to make sure that you check the fifth wheel should be positioned properly. So the fifth wheel should be in a proper position so that the tractor frame clears the landing gear during turns. And then on the back of the trailer, you're just going to talk about your lights, 3 clearance lights, red in color, lenses are clean, not broken, not missing, your 100% reflective tape, and it's visible, it's present, it's red and white in color. And then your 4 tail lights, they're red in color, lenses are clean, not broken, not missing. 3, it has 3 functions. The 2 outer ones have 3 functions, which is hazard, turning, and running. And the 2 inner ones have 2 functions, which is braking and running. And then that pretty much will complete